I feel like one of the main pillars that we need to address as Pacifica or Polynesian communities is our ability to communicate. You know, I know that the way that I was raised, if I tried to stand up for myself or if I tried to explain myself, that was perceived as me talking back or me being disrespectful. And so I think when we learn or when we look at communication and we learn how to communicate, especially when there's strong emotions present, such as grief, resentment, anger, I feel like that begins to bridge the gap for safety to be built. You know, um, I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but this is something that I heard with many of my Polynesian clients was that they felt that they had to suffer in silence. You know, I've had clients share with me that when they've tried to open up about being depressed or about being anxious or, even opening up about a trauma that may have occurred in their life, um, it's typically met with a lot of resistance, or kind of just a lot of dismissiveness, like, oh, get over it, or like one thing I hear so much from Polynesian clients is, my parents told me, like, I have nothing to be depressed over. Like, I have a house, I have a roof, I have family, I have food, and again, I feel like the more we open up and educate ourselves on how to communicate and how to listen to understand and not listen to respond. Because for me personally, that is an issue that I have seen within clients and within my own family systems. You know, someone will share something like, hey, like, I felt really disrespected when you said this or when you did this. And instead of letting it sink in, listening and trying to figure out what the need is that this person is trying to communicate, oftentimes I see a lot of defensiveness. Well, I didn't mean it that way, so it's not my fault you took it that way, you know? And again, it pushes it back to that person that, okay, maybe opening up isn't a good thing. Or maybe letting people know how I'm feeling, maybe it's not safe to do that. Maybe it just creates friction. And so then that person begins to internalize things. So when their feelings do get big and they want to express it, instead of expressing it, they've now taught themselves, like, well, I got dismissed, or, like, they didn't even hear me out. So what's the point of sharing it now? And so I definitely think that communication is a big thing, listening to understand and not listening to respond. And another thing that I actually teach a lot of my parents and clients is approach things from a place of curiosity. So if your kid or your partner does something that irritates you or really, really upsets you or really hurts you to your core, instead of being like, hey, you did this, you're so terrible, try to approach it from a place of curiosity as much as you can. Meaning, ask them, hey, did you mean to do that? Did you mean to say that to me? Because it kind of stung, or like it really hurt my feelings, or, like, what was your intention with doing that? Like, were you trying to hurt me? Because when you approach things from a place of curiosity, people's level of defensiveness typically goes down, you know? Versus if you're coming at someone and you're like, hey, you did this and you're a terrible person and it made me feel this way, wall goes up. And again, it's not really going to be a productive conversation because defenses are up. But if we learn to stop ourselves and try to approach it from a place of curiosity and try to understand, I definitely feel like that's going to be a big step in the right direction for us. Second thing, again, is education. I always tell my clients, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know how you are showing up in the world, or if you do not know that you are doing things that are harmful to other people, how are we supposed to address it? How are we supposed to change it? You know? And so when people point out to you, like, hey, you said this and it made me feel this way, instead of getting defensive, what I want us to work on is really, again, trying to take it in, trying to hear what they said. Like, okay, was the issue with my tone? Was the issue with my body language? Like, was I standing over them? And whatever feedback we're given, we can use that as, okay, now I have some awareness. Maybe when I'm angry, I shut down and I don't want to talk, and maybe I might say some mean things. And that's not to shame ourselves, but it's to teach ourselves, like, okay, next time these emotions come up for me, how can I try to respond differently? Now that I have the awareness that, yeah, I shut down, or I might do mean things when I'm feeling angry or when I'm feeling triggered. And another thing is really, really trying to just understand and come from a place of compassion. I feel like within the Pacific community, there is so much emphasis put on, making sure we look good, or, not bringing shame to the family. Or, I've even had clients tell me, like, they don't want to talk about their depression or their anxiety or trauma because they don't want to air out the family laundry, And I think the more that we show compassion to ourselves and remember that, I'm sorry, guys, this is new waters. You know what I mean? Like, my metaphor that I'm using, I mean, like, we are in completely new territory. Nobody ever modeled this for us. Nobody ever showed us how to do this. So there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be hard moments. And that's okay, because that shows us, okay, we can keep going. We can keep pushing. But if we're meeting ourselves with shame and judgment, we're not going to want to keep going. And on the contrary, if we show ourselves compassion, we try to show ourselves understanding, meaning when we do a behavior that we might not be proud of, instead of shaming ourselves, asking ourselves, like, wow, okay, what need was I trying to meet? Because at the core of everything, you guys, when you really look at behaviors, there is a need that is trying to be met, even if we can't recognize it right now, you know? So instead of shaming ourselves, meet ourselves with compassion. Okay, wow, yeah, I did yell at my best friend. I don't feel good about that. So next time I'm feeling upset with my best friend, what can I do differently? Or how should I do it differently? Are there any solutions for me right now? Like, try to be real with yourself. Try to approach it with that same curiosity that we're using for others.